Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Boss Economic World, where we don't just read the headlines, we tear them apart, put them under a microscope, and tell you who's actually paying for the dinner. I'm your host, and today, friends, we are witnessing a game of high-stakes financial poker that makes Wall Street look like a kindergarten bake sale. Today is December 5th, 2025. The world is turning, the tickers are flashing, and in Europe, the tectonic plates of finance and geopolitics are grinding together so loud you can hear it across the Atlantic. If you're sitting comfortably, maybe check your wallet. Because what's happening in Brussels tonight might just redefine the concept of sovereign debt and theft simultaneously. Let's get straight to the heart of the chaos. This afternoon, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz did something interesting. He cancelled a nice, relaxing trip to Norway, lovely fjords, great salmon, and instead, he hopped on a jet straight to Brussels. Now, why does this matter? Just hours ago, Merz survived a political near-death experience in the Bundestag. His ruling coalition managed to pass a highly controversial pension reform bill. It was ugly. 7 members of his own CDU/CSU bloc, his own people, voted against him. That's like your own family voting against you carving the turkey at Thanksgiving. But he survived. He secured the parliamentary backing. Usually, after a fight like that, a politician goes home, has a schnapps, and sleeps. Not Merz. He's flying into the eye of a much bigger storm. He is meeting Belgian Prime Minister Bart de Wever for a dinner that might be the most expensive meal in European history. The topic? How to raid the cookie jar of the Kremlin without getting your hand chopped off. Here is the context you need to understand. Since the war in Ukraine began, the West has frozen about 260 billion euros of Russian central bank assets. The vast majority of this cash, over 190 billion euros, is sitting in one specific place, Euroclear. For those who don't speak financial plumbing, Euroclear is a clearinghouse based in Brussels. It's the plumbing of the European financial system. If Euroclear breaks, the toilet backs up into everyone's house. The plan on the table, championed by the European Commission and now, surprisingly, by Germany, is to use these frozen assets to back a massive loan to fund Ukraine. We are talking about leveraging these assets to pour billions into Kiev immediately. But here is the kicker, and here is why Belgian PM Bart de Wever is sweating through his suit right now: liability. Belgium is asking a very simple, very scary question: if we give this money to Ukraine, and the war ends, and Russia sues us, and international courts say, hey, you can't just take that money, who pays it back? If the answer is Euroclear, Euroclear goes bankrupt. If Euroclear goes bankrupt, the Belgian economy implodes, and the global financial system has a heart attack. Belgium is saying, we are not taking the bullet for the entire Western alliance. Now, let's look at the irony. This is the delicious part. Germany, traditionally, is the strict schoolteacher of Europe. Fiscal discipline. Responsibility. Don't spend money you don't have. For years, Berlin was terrified of this asset seizure plan. They worried it would hurt the euro's reputation as a reserve currency. They worried about legal precedents. So why, in the winter of 2025, is Friedrich Merz suddenly the biggest cheerleader for this risky financial engineering? Follow the money. Germany's economy is gasping for air. We've got the data. While the headline euro area economy expanded slightly in Q3 due to investment boosts, the core engines, Germany and France, are sputtering. The profit rebounds expected for the DAX and CAC 40, led by luxury and autos, are being slashed. Mercedes and BMW are getting hammered by Chinese EVs. LVMH is seeing softening demand. Germany cannot afford to write a 50 billion euro check to Ukraine from its own tax revenues. The German voters are tired. The budget is tight. So, Merz sees the Russian assets as the magic money tree. If he can use Putin's money to fund the war, he doesn't have to raise taxes in Hamburg or Munich. It's political survival disguised as moral courage. The European Commission knows that getting all 27 member states to agree on this is impossible. Hungary is always a problem, Slovakia is shaky. So, Ursula von der Leyen and her team have pulled a rabbit out of the hat, Article 122. This is an emergency clause in EU treaties. It allows measures to be passed by a qualified majority rather than unanimity if there are severe difficulties in the supply of certain products. They are framing this financial loan as an emergency supply issue. It's a legal hack. It's designed to bypass the veto. But it also means that if the legal basis collapses later, the financial fallout is even messier. Merz is investing massive political capital to force this through before the EU Leaders Summit on December 18th. Now, let's zoom out. While Merz and de Wever are eating their steak frites in Brussels, there is a shadow looming over the table. A shadow shaped like the White House. Relations between Brussels and Washington are, let's call it, frosty. Bloomberg reported today that the Trump administration, specifically the US lobbyists, are pressuring EU countries to block this Russian asset plan. Wait, what? Didn't the US want to seize the assets a few years ago? Yes. But the wind has changed. The Trump administration, with Vice President JD Vance leading the rhetoric, wants to cut a deal. They want to end the war in Ukraine. To make a deal with Putin, you need leverage. You need a carrot. The frozen assets are the biggest carrot the West has. If the EU spends that money now, the leverage is gone. The US is arguing, don't spend the bargaining chips. Brussels sees it differently. They see a US administration potentially preparing to throw Ukraine under the bus to lower gas prices and pivot to China. The EU wants to Trump-proof the funding for Ukraine. They want to lock the money in now so that even if Washington cuts aid, Kyiv has cash. This is not just a banking dispute, it is a battle for the future of the transatlantic alliance. And it's not just about the money. It's about the ideology. Today, the European Commission decided to fine Elon Musk's X a massive sum for non-compliance with the Digital Services Act. In Washington, this was taken as a declaration of war. VP JD Vance immediately accused the EU of censorship. U.S. Ambassador to the EU, Andrew Puzder, went on Bloomberg TV today and didn't mince words. He said these regulations make it impossible for Europe to participate in the AI economy. He said they are designed to target American companies. Puzder's quote is telling, one of them makes it very difficult for the EU to get inexpensive energy, which it desperately needs. He's linking digital regulation to energy policy. He is saying, Europe, you are regulating yourselves into irrelevance. You have no tech giants, so you fine ours. You have no cheap energy, so you regulate ours. This is the backdrop of the Merz to Wever dinner. A fractured West, fighting over the spoils of a war, while the US ambassador openly mocks the EU's economic strategy. Let's look at the corporate side. While the politicians bicker, the smart money is moving. Rheinmetall CEO Armin Papperger dropped a truth bomb today. He said that even if a peace deal is signed in Ukraine, the demand for weapons isn't going anywhere. Europe has entered an extended period of rearming. Think about that. For 30 years, Europe enjoyed the peace dividend. They spent money on welfare, not tanks. That era is dead. The new era is the defense tax. Whether it's Rheinmetall in Germany or Thales in France, the defense sector is the new backbone of European industrial policy. This confirms why Merz is so desperate for the Russian cash. The cost of rearming the Bundeswehr and supporting Ukraine is a generational expense. If he can't use the frozen assets, the German debt brake breaks. So, what does this mean for your portfolio? What are the charts telling us? 1. The bond market shift. Keep an eye on European sovereign debt. We are seeing a fascinating shift in the Netherlands. A massive overhaul of the Dutch pension system is reducing demand for long maturity bonds. European nations are reacting by lowering the length of their borrowing. This flattens the yield curve dynamics. If you trade fixed income, this is technical but critical. 2. The European preference. French President Macron is doubling down on protectionism. He said today he will back a European preference for EVs. This is a direct shot at China. But let's be real, it's also a desperate attempt to save Renault and Stellantis. If you're holding German auto stocks, be careful. The earnings expectations are being scaled back for a reason. The trade war is heating up, and German cars are in the crossfire. 3. Peripheral risk. Look at Bulgaria. Opposition parties filed a no-confidence vote against PM Rosen Zelyaskov just weeks before they are supposed to join the euro. If Bulgaria fails to join, it's another signal that European integration is stalling. And in Czechia, Andrej Babiš is putting his empire in a blind trust to return as premier. The populists are returning, my friends. So, let's wrap this up. Tonight in Brussels, Chancellor Merz is trying to sell a plan that is legally dubious, financially risky for Belgium, and politically hated by the incoming US administration. He is doing it because he has no choice. Germany is cornered. The economic engine is stalling, the defense bills are piling up, and the US security umbrella is looking leaky. Merz needs the Russian money to flow, and he needs it now. He needs to create a fait accompli before Trump takes office in January 2026. But Belgium knows that when the music stops, the one holding the bag usually isn't Germany, it's the little guy. De Wever will demand guarantees. He will want other EU countries to sign blood oaths that they will cover the losses. Will they agree? In a Europe where France has a budget crisis, Italy is Italy, and Germany is scraping by? My prediction, they will fudge it. They will announce a framework. They will use Article 122 to push it through, and they will pray that Putin doesn't sue, or that Trump doesn't retaliate with tariffs. It's a gamble. A massive, multi-billion euro gamble with other people's money. But hey, that's modern economics, isn't it? Keep your eyes on the headlines tomorrow. If Merz leaves Brussels with a smile, the heist is on. If De Wever looks grim, the deal is dead, and Europe is going to have to find another way to pay for its own defense. This is Boss Economic World. We don't just watch the money, we watch the hands that steal it. I'm your host. Stay sharp, stay skeptical, and I'll see you in the next video.